We don't rock, we talk. Today's News Talk, TNT Radio.
And welcome back to today's News Talk with me, Basil Valentine, sitting in for Patrick Henningsen. And I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the founder of Cinema Libre, a studio which gives a voice to the voiceless, which is something we try and do here on today's News Talk as well. So you're very welcome indeed to join us today, Philippe Diaz.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
First of all, the film AM GITMO, I gather it was inspired by Mohamedou Houssaawi's book, The Guantánamo Diary, and is effectively a factionalized version of his experiences. If you can give us just a little bit of background about the book and then what inspired you to make this film.
No, in fact, it was not inspired by his book, but my interest in the issue was, triggered because of his book. Because, it started in 2002 or something like that, when we started to hear that there were people being tortured in Guantanamo. And of course, the first reaction, nobody believed it because, as we know, the US does not torture people, correct? So everybody denied that for a while until we got real, testimonies from lawyers, because it was the time also where lawyers started to volunteer to defend these people, because until then, there was no due process for these people, because the Bush administration had started a concept which was the concept of enemy combatant. So as that was a new concept, and as such, an enemy combatant doesn't have any right of any kind to be defended, habeas corpus, due process, nothing. But at that time, lawyers started to volunteer to defend these people. And what happened is that we started to have a lot of testimony, which were very, very clear, one after the other, that yes, they were being tortured, not only in Guantanamo, but before they reached Guantanamo, they were being tortured on what we call CIA black site, which was the secret site, all around the world. And so the first complete account of what was going on there was the Mohamedou Slahi book, which was a shock, because, on whatever 300 pages, he reveals day after day everything that happened to him. And he put name, and he says exactly what he was going through, every kind of torture, et cetera, et cetera. And then I started to look a lot more about, what was going on there, and look at all the transcript, because the transcript were made available, and so on and so forth. And I saw that it was not like one isolated case, like a bad apple, a bad soldier decided to take revenge on a guy. It was a systematic approach by the Bush administration, who had decided to use what they even call themselves extreme torture methods for the terrorists to refuse to cooperate. What they thought cooperate, because we should always remind people that most of these guys, there was 800 plus, it's funny because, it's 800 plus people sent to Guantanamo, and it's 800 plus because we still don't know to this day exactly how many people were transferred to Guantanamo. And this is totally insane, because, of course, you look at the administration, you say, well, can't you count up to 800? And the answer is no, because it gives them the possibility to make the one who died under torture disappear. So to this day, we don't exactly know, but most, 85% of the 800 people transferred there were transferred because they were sold to the CIA for ransom, for money. And that happened because at the time when the Bush administration decided they needed to find the guilty people who did 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld, who was the Secretary of Defense, had the brilliant idea of printing millions of leaflets that he threw all over Afghanistan, saying, bring me a terrorist who will give you a lot of money. And of course, that started what you can imagine, tons of people started to bring anybody. The neighbor, they wanted their piece of land. The taxi driver, they wanted their car, whatever it is. And these people were sent immediately. They were put immediately to the biggest problem is that the CIA never checked on the guilt of these people. So on the first day they were put through interrogation. Where is Bin Laden? And of course, most people didn't even know who Bin Laden was. You don't want to talk torture. and they were being sent to this CIA black site, being tortured. And the one that they thought had information they didn't want to release, then they were sent to Guantanamo. And that's why 800 people were sent there. And again, I think on the 800 plus, there was only like probably less than 10 who were convicted of any link to terrorism. And when we say link, it could be the driver of one terrorist, it could be the guy bringing message to one to the other, it could be anything, very low level, terrorist. You want to go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and indeed those that were convicted, I assume they gave their confessions under torture, and may well have done so just simply to stop the torture. In the hope that perhaps that would mean that they got a sentence with a finite ending or something. I don't know, I'm guessing. But first of all, to rewind, of these 800 people, were they exclusively plucked from the streets of Afghanistan? I seem to remember also people were snatched from the streets of Iraq as well and taken to Guantanamo.
Yeah, it was from all over the place, but mainly from Afghanistan. And but remember that there was at the time a lot of foreign fighters in Afghanistan. So they were like a lot of foreigners. It's not even talk fighters, there was a lot of foreigners in Afghanistan who were part of the various movement of any kind. And one of the things that we realized also is that they were looking, of course, for high profile terrorists. And so, for example, any terrorist who would speak English, like, for example, Mohamedou Slahi, would be on the top list of wanted people for the military and for the CIA. Because if they were speaking English, it was, it means that they had something to do with terrorism, which I'm not sure why, but, anyway. So if you know, the reality is that we have these people who are transferred there, and they had, again, when they arrived there, zero right to defend themselves, zero right to know what even they were accused of. They were submitted to torture day after day after day. And that's why, I decided to make the film, because, there's an abuse. There's abuse every day in the world, as we know. But this one is an extreme abuse, that, of course, the U.S. in every little law that the United States has passed, in every international convention the United States has signed, and in every even military manual that soldiers have to read in order to serve, it's clearly say we do not torture people. Torture is illegal. So what the U.S. did at the time, they pretty much wiped out the rules of law and said, look, when laws are not convenient to us, when international treaties are not convenient to us, we just don't apply them. And that, of course, it's opening the door for everybody in the world to do the same.
Now, regarding anybody who speaks English as somehow possibly a terrorist, this reminds me of the worst excesses of Francisco Nguema in Equatorial Guinea, where he had school teachers and anybody wearing spectacles arrested and murdered because he feared they were intellectuals plotting against him. It's scarcely better than that, frankly, Philippe. And the layers of injustice in this. I mean, I'm one of those people that believe that, to start with, Osama bin Laden had nothing whatsoever to do with 9/11. So you have people here who had nothing to do with Osama bin Laden, who had nothing to do with 9/11, just simply being rounded up on the basis of a bounty and subjected to decades of torture. I mean, it's absolutely off the charts.
Absolutely. Exactly. That's why I decided to make the film, because I think this story had to be told. And to be honest with you, I even tried to buy the rights of Mohamedou Slahi book, because it was the best account, of course, we could find. Even if, again, there was like hundreds of transcripts that I based my story on, more than this book, of course, because the book had already been sold to this production company who will do this movie called The Mauritanian, with Jodie Foster and Tariq Rahim and all that. And when I saw that, I said, okay, well, they are making a big movie there. That's great. They don't need me. Move on. And when I got a copy of the screenplay, and when I read the screenplay, I said, oh my God, something's wrong is going on here. Because, Mohamedou's book is 300 pages pretty much of torture. What happened to him from A to Z. In the Mauritanian movie, there is like a short montage of 2 minutes of torture. And it's not a book anymore about an innocent man being tortured. It's about, another white hero saving the day. It's another John Wayne movie coming on his horse to save the day. In that case, Jodie Foster. And she's, she's playing the role of Nancy Hollander, who was the lawyer of Mohamedou, is a wonderful person. There's no doubt about that. It's not criticizing her by any way, shape, and form. But we don't need another white hero movie to talk about this story. We need the suffering of these innocent people.
Absolutely, particularly when the crimes against humanity are ongoing. It's not as if it's even closed. What possible justification is the current US administration offering for keeping it open, Philippe?
That's a good question, because there is no justification. Like the same, well, the whole story of Guantanamo is insane from A to Z. Like, for example, we should always remember that all the people there are not considered a human being by the administration, which is like, how is even that possible? So it's all absurd, from A to Z. And so that not only how do they keep it open, but on top of that, there is now what the inmate themselves call Guantanamo 2.0, which is that on let's say the roughly 700 people who have been released right now, they are released most of the time in the country which is not theirs, most of the time in a country where they don't speak the language, without money, without ID, because they have been stripped from their papers and their ID. So, of course, they can find a job. And so they are thrown in a country where there's no way that they can rebuild a life or even find a job, with, of course, major, psychological problem, because you can be tortured for years. Some were tortured for 10 or 20 years. And so, of course, you can be released in this situation with no money, no nothing. So one of the big fight of the movie and all the people who have been supporting us is to ask for reparation for these people, because the minimum is to give them a chance. So minimum is to apologize, of course, number one, because we picked people that, had done nothing, clearly, and were never convicted of anything. And on top of that, give them a chance to rebuild their life that we destroyed. I think that would be the minimum. And so that is, if you want, there is no justification anywhere. The only reason for which, the Guantanamo is not closed, it's because it is a very, very embarrassing situation for the US. Every single time that one man is released, he will do press conference, he will write books, he'll do TV shows, he will do whatever, and talk about what happened to him, of course. And that is extremely embarrassing, because, again, the problem is not so much the issue with these people, because even to compensate them would be nothing for the US government. But it's an embarrassing situation, worldwide. Because, again, if we can do that to anybody when we decide, then any country in the world can do that to American people, to American soldiers, to whatever. And that's the major issue, is that, it's such an absurd situation that, of course, the least they hear about, people in Guantanamo, the best it is. If you look at it, the issue totally disappeared even in the press today. Who is talking about Guantanamo? There are still 30 people there, 22 years later. There are still 30 people there who are innocent of any crime. Does anybody talk about that? No, of course not. It's much more convenient to forget about it. And of course, and the thing that we forgot even more is the people, again, who died under torture. The CIA even acknowledged, they say, oh yeah, we lost a few under torture. We lost a few. So that's the situation. So that's why I made AM GITMO, because I think that had to be revealed and talked about.
It certainly did, and well done for putting a spotlight on this absolutely horrendous situation. And there are very few more voiceless than the inmates of Guantánamo Bay. So congratulations to Philippe for having made this new film, AM GITMO. What was it like to make the film, Philippe? Where did you produce it? Very curious to know just any anecdotes about the production itself.
Well, it was complicated, because first of all, we knew that we could be stopped at any time by the power in America, because we were denouncing the CIA and the military for, abusing people and torturing them and so on and so forth. So we had to keep it under wrap. And I knew very well from the beginning that I would not get any Hollywood money. I would have to finance it privately, because, if you go to, it would be like they did for the Mauritanian white hero saving the day. That would be great. But that's the opposite in the film. And if you go to any Netflix in the world and say, well, I want to make a movie about, Middle Eastern people captured, tortured by the US. And of course, the main actors will be from the Middle East. They just laugh at you. So we privately financed it. We kept it under wrap. Everybody was supposed to be totally secret about everything that we were doing. And we shot entirely in California, even if we had to recreate, Afghanistan. We recreated Afghanistan because he's kidnapped in Afghanistan. We recreated Cuba and all the cells and the facility in Guantánamo. We recreated, of course, there was part in the US as well. So we did all that in California, and I have to say it worked, So we are happy to, it's available. We released it. We opened it in theaters like a few months ago, and now it's available on our own platform because for censorship reason, the same thing. We created our own platform, which is clsnow.tv. CLS for Cinema Libre Studio, and now NOW, clsnow.tv. And it's available for everybody to watch. And I, of course, encourage everybody to watch it because they will. What I did, I took pretty much all the transcript, the official transcript of the trials and the testimonies of all the prisoners, and made a story based on that. Which means that I didn't pile up on the main character what happened to different people. I took what happened to every single inmate and put it on one character. And that's already, I could not even put everything because there was some torture that you can't even imagine. Just to pick one, putting a garden hose through the throat of an inmate, force it to go down up to his stomach and turning the water on until he pass out and can't breathe anymore. And it's just one among, there were, people lost their limbs because of torture. Anyway, I'm sure you don't want to hear more.
No, not at all, Philippe. I mean, I think it's we're all grown-ups here, and I think it's important because too often people want to look away, and that's exactly what the torturers want. Has the profile of Guantanamo been raised by the film? We sincerely hope so. Do you foresee any possible change with a change in administration in the US? I can't help thinking that a Trump victory would likely be even worse. We need a complete change of outlook, frankly, and a reckoning with history, surely.
Absolutely. Well, to tell you the truth, we have got a lot of support when we released the film from top, law professors, of course, politicians. We had even the UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights and Counterterrorism, Fionnuala Ní Fhláthlainn, who came to support us for the premiere. She's the only one who was authorized to go to Guantanamo and write a damning report, on Guantanamo. So we got all this support, and we are trying, for example, to organize a screening at the UN, because trust me, some even people who are supposed to deal with that don't even know nothing about it, not even that it's still open, not even that there are still people there. We are trying to organize a screening in Congress, but, these days, but, it's not even, I would say for any president, any major party, it's better to keep it open and keep it under the carpet. It's much easier.
Because if they close it, it's an admission that the whole thing was a total put-up job in the first place.
Absolutely. And you will have these last 30 people who will write books and do press conference and this and that. And if you think about it, so Obama's promise to close Guantanamo didn't happen. Of course, Trump had zero interest in closing Guantanamo. And after that, we had Joe Biden, who promised to close Guantanamo. And of course, it's still the same story. They are trying pretty much to release one at a time, one every 6 months or something like that, and hope that nobody will talk about it. That's pretty much what they are trying to do. And it's all fine. Doesn't matter. When we make a mistake, we assume all mistakes. And we say, let's fix it. So that's what the government needs to do. Today is to say, okay, that was a mistake. We were wrong 100%. Now let's take care of these people, that these 800 people we ruined the life of, and including the one who died, because they are now families without the father, and who are struggling to survive. So these people have to be taken care of. And of course, as we just said, nobody cares today.
I fear you're right. And have any of the ex-prisoners been able to resume a normal life back in their home country?
The one who is the most active, there are several who are active in trying to close Guantánamo, like Mohamedou and other inmates. And some are trying, and we are part of it too, to raise funds to help people. Like, for example, when we had the premiere of the film, we had an exhibit of the painting that the inmates did when they were in Guantánamo, and tried to do a silent auction to help them, because these people have no way to survive. And they are all, even Mohamedou became a very important figure in this fight. He's still on a temporary visa type of things in Holland, because he lives in Holland. For example, I tried to invite him when we did the premiere at the Marbella Film Festival in Spain. I tried to invite him to come down, and he said, I can't, because if they feel that I'm not exactly square with my visa, I'm going to be thrown out.
Where you won an award, I believe, in Marbella.
Yes, we got nominated for Best Film, Best Director, and we won Best Actor. So we were happy with that.
I look forward to watching it myself. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today, Philippe Diaz, here on today's News Talk.